Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Alchemist. Tonight we drift into the glassy stillness of an ancient tower, where one woman's isolation becomes a lens to the strange and the luminous. Our story glows softly with the colors of candlelight refracting through thick, hand-blown windows. Outside, the wind hums through crooked weather vanes. Inside, in a circular chamber at the tower's peak, the widow of Glasshill prepares her nightly ritual: parchment, flame, and flask. She doesn't sleep much, not since the funeral, or maybe not since the wedding. The timeline blurs when the days look the same: clear glass in every direction, moonlight falling on cold stone, and the scent of parchment never quite fading. You probably want to know this. She didn't build the tower. Her husband did, and now he's buried in the garden where lavender climbs the walls like a clock running backward. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The glass at the top of the tower is thick and warped, imported from Venice, some of it rumored to contain powdered gemstones to enhance its brilliance. The panes are not perfectly clear. Each one carries its own secret distortion, like an imperfect memory. The widow has studied these imperfections for nearly 7 years, each night with a different lantern, a different lens, or a different mind. Tonight she chooses the violet-glassed lamp and trims its wick with surgical care. She lights it not with flint, but with a small brass wand from her late husband's cabinet, a device powered by powdered silver and friction. A spark snaps. The flame dances, and the tower is alive. She sits before her work table, crystals in little cloth pouches, powders in stoppered bottles, notes scrawled in a fastidious but increasingly frenzied hand. The whole room smells faintly of beeswax and vinegar, with something sweet decaying beneath. Across the table stands her favorite object, a convex window shaped like an eye, facing north. Through it she sees stars caught between panes, as though the heavens had paused just outside her reach. The window, once meant for astronomy, now seems to look back at her. She never covers it. She's tried. The wind outside taps a branch against the east wall, but she ignores it. She is grinding dried rosemary and white salt, muttering a phrase in old High German, one she found etched into the spine of a book that had no title. Historians still argue whether that dialect was truly spoken by alchemists, or simply made up by 17th century pranksters desperate to seem mysterious. Either way, the results intrigue her. She combines the powder with a trace of ambergris and green myrrh. When the mixture begins to smoke faintly under the lamp's glow, she inhales. Her pupils dilate. Her ears begin to ring, not unpleasantly, more like an old tuning fork being struck at a distance. This isn't science. Or it is, but only if you count the kind practiced by monks with too much free time and not enough supervision. The widow has degrees in astronomy and herbalism, granted by defunct institutions, but nothing she ever learned there prepared her for the way the moonlight thickens when it hits a certain pane just past midnight. In the warped glass her own reflection appears, too pale, too tired. But tonight, the reflection moves a little slower than she does, not enough to alarm, just enough to notice. She notes it with a charcoal pencil in the back of her journal. It's not the first time. At the bottom of the tower, a brass pendulum marks the time with a hollow clunk, swaying across a floor mosaic shaped like a serpent eating its tail. The tower's foundation predates the town by at least 2 centuries, though no one speaks of it in the village anymore. They think she's mad. Or worse, harmless. She adds a drop of camphor and something called owl shade extract to the mixture. The result is a slow swirl of grey-blue vapor that curls toward the glass ceiling and disperses without touching it. It is then that she hears the sound again, a low creak, not wood, glass. The kind of sound that makes your teeth feel loose. The curved northern window begins to glisten, not with moisture, but with motion. Light refracts strangely, showing a ripple, no, a flicker of a face. A child? An old man? Neither? And then, nothing. She presses a hand to the cold glass. Nothing. Her own breath fogs a small patch. No figure, no flicker, just her own thin fingers slightly shaking. In the distance, a bell rings. Not from the village, from nowhere. She marks the time. Midnight. Of course, earlier that year, a travelling herbalist had told her about a monastery in Carcassonne where monks reportedly grew luminous basil in moonlight. According to fringe accounts, mostly from the type of journals written with too much wine and not enough peer review, the plants could detect ghosts. She'd tried growing her own. The seeds never sprouted. Still, something grows in her mind now, something curious. Maybe it's the mixture, maybe it's the silence, or maybe it's that the face in the glass, whatever it was, seemed familiar. The candle flickers out. The lamp sputters once, twice, then dies. Darkness, but the glass still gleams. The widow leans forward, peering into her own reflection. It does not move. She stands. So does it. She tilts her head. It does not. She stares. It stares back. Then slowly it smiles. She does not. She steps back, heart pounding like old wood warping in heat. The image vanishes. Reflection again matches movement. Just a trick of the light, just fatigue, or something waking up. She closes the journal and marks the page with a raven feather. Tonight, the tower is not empty. The following night, rain taps lightly on the tower's windows like a patient question. The widow of Glass Hill answers it not with words but with motion, a slow climb up the spiral stairs, oil lamp in hand, and a tray of artifacts balanced carefully beneath one arm. The tower may belong to her, but it does not always feel like it. Some nights, it inhales as she exhales. Some nights, she wonders who's listening. She sets the tray down on the wide table beneath the domed ceiling. On it, a brass magnifier, a flask of juniper distillate, and a stack of her husband's old notebooks bound in cracked leather. The rain's rhythm soothes something in her, even as her fingers tremble just slightly while untying the journal ribbons. It's the third volume, the one she's put off reading for months. Inside, the margins overflow with cramped notes, most in Latin, some in something less clear. The handwriting shifts slightly toward the middle, more angular, less precise, as though whoever wrote it was beginning to distrust the words themselves. One passage is circled, the ink feathered and old. Speculum lucis, nocturne, revelad non visum sed voluntatem. The nightlight mirror reveals not sight, but intent. She squints, turning the page to find an odd insert, a sheet of mica, thin and translucent, etched with tiny shapes, hexes or maybe diagrams. She holds it to the lamp. The pattern dances. Beneath the sheet is a bookmark, a pressed sprig of anise, brittle and yellowed. "Did you ever even try to explain this?" she whispers, as though the pages might answer. Her husband had been secretive, yes, but also absent-minded in that charming way inventors often are. Historians still argue whether his most successful invention, a small pump system that recycled lamp oil, was his design or borrowed from a Dutch trader. Either way, he never patented it, said it was too small a glory. She flips further until she finds it, a reference to the north window, a sketch of it even, with annotations measuring degrees of curve, angle of lunar entry, distance from the mirror wall, convex resonance, minor hum. Don't stay long, don't stay long. She frowns and stands, walking toward the window that had flickered last night. The pain is calm now. Her reflection, tame, the rain outlines her in faint silver droplets. She presses the mica sheet to the glass. For a moment, just a moment, she thinks she sees movement again. But it is too fast, too fluid to say for sure. Returning to the table, she selects a second book, thinner, titled Corpus Vitrum Specularia and Lightcraft. The margins contain her own notes now, years old. One reads, "Venetian master glassmakers believed light could be imprisoned in curved panes." Fringe idea, yes. But Venice was full of those in the late Middle Ages. One apocryphal account claimed a woman named Isabetta de Luma could trap sunrise inside a goblet. Of course, no goblet survives, and the only evidence is a water-stained pamphlet found stuffed in a wine barrel. But still, the story lingers. The widow pulls out her husband's most puzzling device, a lens array set in a brass loop, with tiny inscriptions in Greek around the rim. She's polished it dozens of times but never seen through it properly. Tonight, though, she steadies it between two candle holders, aligns it with the rain-slicked pane, and watches. For the first time, the glass doesn't blur, it sharpens, and behind her reflection, she sees shelves, wooden, lined with jars. But her tower has no such shelves. Not there. She stands slowly, turns around. Just stone. She turns back. The shelves are still there. One jar is tipped, a black feather inside. She reaches toward the glass, and the door downstairs slams shut. She jumps, the sound sharp in the night, not echoed by any storm. She waits. Nothing. Another sound, then softer, paper sliding, as if someone's pulling a page from a book. She grips the lens, tight. Then, reluctantly, she makes her way downstairs. Each step groans. The main door is latched. The inner library, untouched, except one book lies open on the floor. She didn't leave that out. It's not even one she reads. On Light and Illusion, authored anonymously, bound in red cloth. She picks it up. Inside the front cover is a note she's never seen before, written in her husband's spidery script. Some reflections do not belong to this room. She sits down hard on the stairs. You'd be surprised how long it takes to unlearn loneliness. How your mind clings to echoes and drafts and creaks that mean nothing, until maybe they don't. A draft curls around her ankle. The air feels suddenly older. She rises, takes the book, and climbs back to her workshop. As she enters, she notices her tray has shifted slightly. One corner hangs off the table's edge. It didn't before. A single juniper berry has rolled onto the floor. She picks it up, considers it, then tosses it into the burner. The room fills with sharp, fresh smoke. Her eyes sting. When she wipes them, she looks up, and the lens still shows the shelves. But now there's something new. A hand, resting on one of the jars, not hers. The hand lifts the jar, tips it. Inside, more anise. She blinks. Oh, the vision shimmers, folds inward like cloth. The image collapses. Gone. She exhales and doesn't realize until then she's been holding her breath. In the far corner of the room, a spider crawls across the curve of glass, its silhouette enlarged to monstrous size in the light of the lamp. She watches it for a long time. Then quietly she writes in her journal, Night 2. Reflections stable but layered. I think he's still here. Or someone is. Or many. Outside, the rain stops. The glass stops gleaming, but the feeling doesn't. Morning comes reluctantly to Glass Hill. The village below stretches and yawns in smoke-coloured fog, unaware that above it, in a glass tower scraping at clouds, the widow hasn't slept. She sits at her work table, chin resting on one ink-stained hand, gazing through the convex northern window. She hasn't spoken aloud since the rain stopped. Something in her resists breaking the silence. Instead, she watches as mist beads on the outer panes, catching light in a way that turns the world faintly opalescent, like mother of pearl painted on old glass. She notes it in the margin. Window fog reacts to temperature, but pattern looks intentional. A swirl, a ripple, the same form that framed the phantom hand the night before. She stands and adjusts a curtain she rarely touches. Behind it, a lesser-used window, smaller, nearly circular, set into the tower wall like a spyglass. Its glass is different, older, blown in uneven spirals, so looking through it feels like gazing into a puddle. This is the round window. She's never trusted it, but today something about the mist-drawn swirls makes her curious. She peers through, at first just haze, then motion, not outside, within. A flicker, there, at the bottom edge. She leans closer. A face, half of one, really, pressed too close to the other side of the glass. Lips, nose, part of a cheek, smiling. She recoils so quickly she knocks over a bottle of dried lemon balm. It scatters across the stone floor, little yellow flecks skittering like insects. When she dares to look again, the round window is clear. Mist gone, her pulse slowly returns to normal. She gathers the spilled herbs, only half listening to the sound of a bird calling somewhere outside. A raven, maybe, or something trying to be one. The round window has no latch, no opening. It was sealed into the tower centuries ago, no known way to clean it. And yet, the glass is immaculate. She jots that down too. Later, at noon, though the light never fully sharpens through the tower's glass canopy, she flips back through on light and illusion. Something itches at her memory. There, a note. Early Venetian architects used curved glass to magnify spiritual imperfections. An early confection tool. A confession tool. Ridiculous. And yet, she remembers an odd mention from a visiting stonemason last year, one of the few who ever came up the tower's narrow stair. He'd noted that the tower's glass looked nervous, like it wanted to move but couldn't. She'd laughed at the time. Now, she wonders. Historians still argue whether medieval optical devices were ever used for actual seeing or if they were metaphorical, designed to provoke, not reveal. There's one disputed account from the court of King Charles VI describing a curved glass globe that brought forth regrets from men who gazed too long. Some say it was merely a convex mirror, others say it was cursed. The widow, meanwhile, prepares her next test. She hangs a prism in front of the round window using a chain salvaged from an old timepiece. It dangles just so, where the light touches the edge of the glass at sunset. The prism isn't special, just something she found in her husband's drawer labeled incomplete, unstable refraction. A bit dramatic. Still, she watches. As the sun begins its crawl behind the hills, a single beam hits the prism. A flare of light dances across the stone floor. She waits. The reflection doesn't land where it should. It bends, just slightly, but enough to matter. It lands on the far wall, on a shelf of dusty instruments. One by one, they begin to glint, then twitch. Not move, exactly, but shift. She approaches slowly, watching as a glass stirring rod rolls 2 degrees left. A copper alembic vibrates faintly, and a spoonful of powdered antimony rattles in its tin dish. Then it stops, dead still. She marks the time 7:03 p.m. She stares at the prism, at the window, then she does something reckless. She opens the mirrored cabinet, the one her husband forbade her to touch. Inside a velvet-wrapped bundle, unlabeled, she unfolds it slowly. A lens, but not like the others. This one has no glass, just a black ring with a silk screen in its center, a screen that seems to drink light instead of bending it. She holds it to her eye and turns toward the round window. The smile is back. This time the whole face is there, hers, but younger. No lines, no sorrow, no grief. Smiling like she used to, the reflection raises a hand, waves. The real widow does not. The reflection still does. She drops the lens. It clatters to the floor. The screen remains intact, but the spell is broken. The round window reflects only clouds now. She slides the velvet bundle away, but leaves the prism hanging. Later that night, as she closes her journal, she notices something odd in the reflection of the northern window. Behind her, on the table, the mica sheet she used the night before now glows faintly. A soft pulse, like breath. She doesn't touch it. She simply stares. And as she watches, the reflection in the window does something her body does not. It tilts its head, just slightly, just enough to make her heart skip. She whispers to no one. "Who are you?" The room answers in silence, but the window gleams with promise, and the round window watches. The next evening arrives, not with sunset, but with an odd lavender hue that wraps around the tower like gauze. The widow of Glasshill lights the wall sconces by hand, though only half of them work these days. She likes the unevenness of the light, makes the shadows look honest. Tonight, her focus narrows to an object she's long left untouched, the candle mold marked T3, a simple iron mold, with a note in her husband's sharp lettering: wax ratio must remain 4:1 or risk time slip. A silly idea, popular in tavern tales and fringe lecture halls. A scholar once presented a paper on temporal dilation caused by candlelight, only to be laughed out of the University of Prague. Historians still argue whether he was onto something, or just deeply misunderstood the behavior of wax in cold climates. She removes the mold carefully. Dust blooms from the shelf in slow motion. Her fingers already smell of beeswax and pine. The candle mixture is one of her own design. 4 parts tallow wax, 1 part lavender resin, with just a trace of mercury vapor captured from a broken thermometer. Dangerous. Obviously. Effective. She's not entirely sure. But last time she burned one, the shadows on the wall stretched 3 times their normal length and refused to move, even when she did. She pours the mix and lets it settle. Outside, the wind picks up. A thin whistle passes through the tower's top vents. The sound resembles a breath caught in a bottle. Once the candle sets, she trims the wick with silver scissors, lights it, and waits. The flame is pale, almost bluish, and the light it casts doesn't behave. Where the candle burns, the shadows ripple, lengthen. Her quill, resting on the desk, casts a silhouette across the wall that looks more like a serpent than a feather. The hourglass next to it drips sand downward and upward. The widow squints. This isn't just illusion. She retrieves her late husband's measuring rod and marks the shadow of the hourglass. It's exactly 43 centimeters long. Then she moves the candle 3 inches left. The shadow shortens. Not strange. Then it grows again, without her touching anything. She frowns, moves the candle back. The shadows freeze, and then, slowly they begin to move on their own. Not in time with the candlelight's flicker. In time with something else. The pendulum clock on the wall ticks once, twice. The shadows pulse after the 3rd tick. A delay. She notes it, then closes her eyes. For a full minute she listens, and hears nothing, until suddenly the tick sounds again, but from behind her. She opens her eyes. The clock is still in front of her, but the sound came from elsewhere. Her gaze shifts to the round window, where faintly something glows. She stands, candle in hand, and walks toward it. As she moves, the shadow of her arm extends out of view until it passes the window entirely, curling across the wall like ink in water. She holds the candle near the pane. The flame turns green. She breathes through her nose. Lavender, mercury, and something sweet. Clove? No, something older. And then she sees it, not outside the window. Inside it, the face again. Hers, not smiling this time. Mouth open slightly, whispering something. She leans closer. The mouth shapes syllables. She can't hear them. She reaches forward, touches the glass. And in that instant, something pulls. Her vision tugs sideways, like being jerked underwater by an unseen current. The tower spins, only not really. She steps back, blinking, and everything seems half a second slow. The pendulum ticks, then the shadow moves, then the sound follows. She touches her lips, cold. Back at the desk, the candle still burns, but the wax is dripping up. She snuffs the flame. The shadows snap back. The wax obeys gravity. Everything is normal again, sort of. She returns to her desk, hand trembling just enough to spill the ink. She lets it bleed across the page, then begins writing, slowly, carefully. Light does not move in one direction. Time does not move in one direction. Shadows obey something else entirely. She closes the journal and looks again at the hourglass. The sand now sits completely still, as though paused. She taps the glass. Nothing, then turns it over. The sand begins to flow, from bottom to top. She blinks once, then twice. Then the sand returns to normal. But she knows what she saw, and the image of her other self mouthing something in silence still sits behind her eyes. As she prepares for bed, the widow removes the candle from its holder and places it in the lock drawer of her desk. The drawer with the iron key she keeps around her neck. She doesn't sleep much, but tonight she won't try at all. Instead, she'll sit with her back to the windows and stare at the fireplace, unlit but safer than facing the glass. In the distance, a bell tolls again, one she can't place. She whispers to the quiet, "Tell me what you want." The tower says nothing, but the shadows ripple in reply. The following afternoon is brighter than usual. Sunlight lances through the clouds, casting dazzling fractals on the tower floor. They scatter like puzzle pieces refracted through the curved panes. The widow of Glass Hill doesn't trust the sunlight much more than the moonlight. At least the moon doesn't pretend. Still, she takes it as a sign. Today, she decides she'll return to something more grounded, testing the acoustics of the window panes. Sound through glass has always intrigued her, Most people think of glass as silent, inert, but she's read the fringe papers, particularly the bizarre 1530 Treatise de Vortibus, which claimed that certain panes could recall sounds long after they'd been made. Historians still argue whether this was literal or poetic metaphor. Some think it was simply early musings on echo chambers. Others believe the author may have been suffering from mercury poisoning. Either way, she's curious. She starts with her tuning forks, 3 of them, silver, iron, and one made of a strange bronze alloy her husband never labeled. She sets each one before a different window, strikes them one at a time, and listens. Silver, crisp, pure tone. Fades quickly. Iron, duller, resonates longer. The bronze one, it hums low and long, and she swears she hears a second note, layered beneath. Almost a voice. Almost. She moves closer to the easternmost pane, the largest flat one. Its surface is flecked with faint green imperfections. Her husband once called them frozen moss. When she presses her fingers to it, the glass is cool but vibrates faintly, like the skin of a kettle drum. Then it happens. She hums. Just a simple note, an idle experiment. But the glass answers back. Not an echo. A harmony, 1 half-tone lower. She stops, heart pounding, waits, then hums again, deliberately off-key. Again the window replies. In tune, she stumbles back, knocking over a stool. It clatters across the floor, startling a raven perched on the roof beams. The bird lets out a hoarse caw and flutters off. When the glass settles, she tries again, but this time with a phrase, "Hello?" Nothing. She tries a different frequency, a slow whistle through her teeth. The pane shimmers, not visibly, but in her ears. The note bends mid-tone, like it's thinking. Then, from the center of the pane, a faint hum, no real tone, no direction, more like breath. She drops her voice to a whisper. "What are you?" A pause, then tap, from the inside. She stares, hand still on the glass. Another tap, then a third. She removes her hand. The tapping stops. She exhales through her nose, rubs her eyes, and for the first time since the strange events began, she lets herself mutter aloud. "I should have burned this tower." That night, she sets up an experiment. A copper wire touches the humming pane, trailing down to a wax cylinder phonograph. One her husband claimed could record the voice of silence. She always thought it was poetic nonsense, but tonight she's ready to believe most things. She begins the recording, lets it run. She doesn't hum, doesn't speak, just stands still and listens while the wax etches its tiny groove. After 2 minutes, she stops the machine, rewinds, plays it back. At first, nothing, just the faint scratch of wax. Then breath, not hers, too deep. Then a whisper, indistinct, but repeated. She listens 5 times. Then a 6th. She hears the word closer. Her blood chills. She plays it again. This time, the voice says something new. Remember the garden? She nearly drops the cylinder. The garden. She hasn't thought of it in months. The one behind the tower where she buried her husband, where she once grew rosemary and wormwood, where the sun still shines, but nothing quite thrives. She bolts upright, heart racing. She checks the window again. Just her reflection. But her reflection's mouth is open, not hers. Its lips move slowly, deliberately, and she reads them as clearly as if they'd spoken aloud. "Come back." She slams the curtain shut, and for the first time since she began experimenting, she locks the door to the study. She won't sleep, but she'll be safe. Probably, the next morning, she does something she hasn't done since her husband's funeral. She goes outside. The garden is smaller than she remembers. The hedges have grown wild, the lavender shriveled into brown stalks. The grave marker is untouched. Simple stone, uncarved. She couldn't bear to choose words. She kneels beside it, places a hand on the earth. It's warm, too warm. She stares at her fingers, then back at the tower. One of the glass panes, high above, glints in the sunlight, not reflecting it, shining on its own. She returns inside without speaking. Back upstairs, she retrieves the bronze tuning fork, strikes it again, and this time, she doesn't hum, she listens. The window doesn't answer, but the fork trembles. and in the curved round window, a shape begins to form, a silhouette, small at first, then growing. The widow grips the edge of her desk. The shape solidifies, and it's her husband, smiling, but not the smile she remembers. This one is expectant. She doesn't wave, she doesn't speak, she just reaches for the curtain and pulls it shut. Because she knows that whatever's behind the glass, it's learning. The curtain stays shut for 3 days. Not that it matters. The reflection, if that's even the right word, has found its way into other windows. The curved pane above the stairwell, the distorted hexagonal sliver behind the apothecary shelf. Even in the reflection on the polished surface of her copper kettle, every glint now demands her attention. The widow of Glass Hill hasn't eaten much. A few bites of bread, a sip of rosemary broth. Her appetite sits somewhere between dread and distraction. She has bigger concerns, like the ink, or more precisely, the new ink she's decided to make. It's an idea that came to her not in a dream. She no longer dreams, but in a waking half-stupor, while scrubbing soot from the base of her alembic. A formula tucked in the margin of a forgotten field book, penned by someone with initials she didn't recognize. The ink recipe was incomplete, or coded. Still, she recognizes the ingredients, or at least thinks she does. First powdered owl bone, easy enough. A bit macabre, sure, but the small skeleton she preserved last winter has dried neatly, and the mortar and pestle grind it to dust just fine. Second, dew gathered under a full moon. The last moon was just 2 nights ago. She had collected a vial's worth from the north-facing side of the tower roof. Careful not to let the drops touch metal, she combines the two with a third element, wine-reduced vinegar, aged over 7 years. That she had plenty of. Her late husband had been fond of obscure condiments. The mixture turns dark violet, not black, not blue, violet, like bruised nightfall. She dips a raven feather in and tests it on blank parchment. Nothing appears. She waits. Still nothing. She tries heat, holding the parchment gently above the fire. Faint lettering begins to emerge, jagged, sideways, but not what she wrote. She had written Test Ink 1. What appears instead is They write through you. She steps back, frowns, tries again. This time she writes, Are you here? She waits, warms the page again. New text reveals, Always, a lesser woman might scream. The widow, however, just sighs deeply, rubs her brow, and mutters, Well, that's not ideal. She begins a third trial, this time writing a question she hadn't dared until now. What do you want? The ink dries invisible. She heats the page. Letters bloom again, slower this time. To be seen, seen. It's always that, isn't it? Every ghost, every shade, every wandering thought, just desperate for notice. She sits with that idea for a long while, then she does something peculiar. She writes one final phrase, then show me something only you could know. She heats the parchment. This time the ink reveals only a single word, fennel. She drops the page. Fennel. It was the first word her husband ever spoke to her, back when they were strangers at a village apothecary fair. He'd smelled the herb in her satchel and launched into a tangent about its alchemical uses for clarity, digestion, and he claimed with a smirk conversing with shadows. She thought he was ridiculous. She married him 6 months later. She hasn't spoken the word aloud in years. And now, there it is, written by a hand not hers, in ink made from owl and moon. She doesn't sleep that night. Instead, she begins cataloguing the pages. Ink made from moon dew only works under specific lunar conditions. She marks that. Owl bone ash adds a certain tint to the messages, too sharp, almost as if carved rather than written. She tries other bones. Rat, chaotic, nonsense phrases. Crow, useful but rude. Cat, extremely judgmental. But none respond quite like owl. She fills 6 pages. On the 7th, she asks, Are you my husband? The ink dries. The page remains blank. She waits, warms. Still blank. Then she writes again, gently. Or, are you something wearing him? This time, the answer appears quickly. He let me in. Her stomach sinks. Not an answer she expected. Not one she understands. Not yet. But it rings with a kind of truth. Maybe he knew, maybe he invited it. Maybe the tower had never truly belonged to either of them. She scans her notes. In the margins of the old book from A. Isesh, she finds a scribbled line she missed before. Do not write at dawn. They read best in dusk. She glances at the windows. The sun is just dipping. The tower begins to fill with that same violet tone as the ink. Everything hums. Not audibly, but her bones feel it. She gathers the ink, hides it behind the fourth brick in the hearth, the loose one, her secret stash for delicate tools. She closes her journal, seals it with wax. Then, reluctantly, returns to the round window. She pulls the curtain aside. It's dark, but something glimmers. She places her palm to the glass. The surface tingles, and then, beneath her touch, a word begins to etch itself in the condensation. Slow, uneven. Fennel. The same word, written from the inside. This time she doesn't back away. She whispers, voice steady, I see you. And from somewhere deep within the pane, almost too soft to notice, comes a whisper, not in her ears, but in her spine. Good. She finds him on the stairs. Not him, of course. Not the man she married, who once burned his eyebrows off trying to distill cloud water in a copper still. No, this figure has his height and shape, but not his warmth, not his weight on the step, not the smell of ink and fennel on his collar. It stands 3 steps down from the landing, where the spiral tightens and sound doesn't echo quite right. It isn't night yet, but the tower is in shadow, and her candle throws long, theatrical shapes that make it hard to tell where the angles end and the figure begins. She speaks first. I know you're not him. The shape doesn't move. She lifts the candle slightly. Wax drips on her wrist. She doesn't flinch. Why? Stares. Still nothing. She steps down. 1 pace, then 2. The figure retreats without footsteps, just a glide, like fog rearranging itself. She knows better than to follow too far. Instead, she turns around and climbs back to the tower's summit, sealing the trapdoor behind her. She wedges a brass telescope mount into the hinge. It won't stop anything determined, but it'll slow it down enough for her to prepare. Back at the work table, she turns her attention to the gift left behind, days earlier. A small device wrapped in oilcloth, offered by the travelling clockmaker who rarely speaks and smells faintly of rust and mint. She'd nearly forgotten it, amidst all the glass and whispering ink. The clockmaker had called it a mirror coil. No explanation, just a wink, and useful in places with complicated reflections. She hadn't had the nerve to test it. Now she does. The object is no larger than her palm. Bronze, mostly, with tiny teeth like a gear, and a hinge that clicks open like a locket. Inside 2 polished mirrors set at skewed angles, so that when you peer inside, your own eye stares back, except it's not quite you. The pupil too wide, the blink too slow. She places it on the table and aligns it with the north-facing window. Nothing happens, at first, but when she adjusts the angle, just so, the mirrors catch the fading sunlight. A pulse shivers through the air. Then behind her, a quiet clink. She turns. The flasks on the shelf are vibrating, just barely. The green one hums like a plucked string. The clear one turns cloudy, then clears again. She opens the journal and notes everything, though her handwriting has become slightly crooked. The ink flows unevenly, skipping now and then like a heartbeat out of rhythm. She tests the coil again, this time aligning it with the round window. The effect is immediate. Her candle sputters and flares 3 inches taller. The air thickens, warm and suddenly fragrant, lavender, and something meatier. Not pleasant, not unpleasant, just present. And in the mirror's depth, the face returns. Not the smiling one from before. This one watches her with something like hunger or need. She closes the coil. Everything returns to normal. She opens it again. The figure in the mirror doesn't reappear, but the reflection behind her still blinks when she does not. She closes it again. Then, methodically, she dims every candle in the room but one. She draws the thick velvet curtain across the central glass ceiling. Darkness settles in layers. Then, carefully, she holds the mirror coil over her teacup and opens it. Steam curls upward. The reflection in the coil doesn't match the steam. It's rising in the wrong direction. She records that too. She's no longer afraid. Exactly. Just aware. Hyper-aware. She retrieves the other object left by the clockmaker, a sliver of silvered glass wrapped in linen and tied with waxed thread. She'd forgotten this entirely. She cuts the thread, unwraps it. It's not a mirror, precisely. It's fogged, like an old breath still clings to the surface. She exhales onto it. The fog deepens, then clears. Now the glass shows a hallway, but not hers. Stone, yes, but not this tower. Torches line the walls. One is sputtering as she watches a figure rounds the corner, wearing her face, only older, much older, hair white as chalk, robes stained with ink and wax. The figure pauses, looks up, meets her eyes through the glass, and then mouths a phrase. 4 words, simple, but terrifying. Don't open the door. The image fades. The sliver grows cold in her hand. She wraps it, again slowly, carefully, locks it in the drawer with the candle from before. Then she checks the trap door, still sealed, but she hears something from below. Not movement. Music. A low, droning hum, mechanical, soft, like gears grinding in honey. She crouches and presses her ear to the wood. Below, she hears a click, click, click like someone winding a pocket watch endlessly. The smell of mint and rust drifts upward. The clockmaker. But he left days ago, didn't he? She whispers through the floorboards, unsure why. Are you here to help me? Silence. Then the faintest voice, almost too soft to name as sound. Only if you ask the right question. She backs away, returns to the mirror coil, writes in her notes. Some devices are listening more than they reflect. She closes the journal, stares at the flame, then says aloud, "What's the wrong question?" No reply, only the hum and the tick, and her own breath fogging the curved northern glass. Outside, night falls with less ceremony than usual. Inside, the tower prepares, as do its mirrors. Rain returns to Glass Hill like a remembered promise. Thin at first, then insistent, tapping on the tower's many windows, as though hoping to be let in. The widow of Glass Hill doesn't open the shutters. She doesn't move much at all. She's been sitting in the same chair for hours, watching the same bubbling flask and waiting for a storm that matches the one brewing in her gut. Her latest potion is temperamental. Its ingredients were simple enough: crushed carnelian, water collected during a thunderclap, dried belladonna leaf, and a tiny thread of cloth torn from her husband's old cloak. The idea? A storm-reactive solution, one that might reveal through bubbles or surface shimmer images hidden in weather. A strange concept, to be sure, but she'd found the recipe buried in an old ledger under the floorboards, labelled Tempestum Noma YV. There were no prior Tempestums. At least, none she'd found. That's how her husband organized things. Chaos wrapped in numbers. The potion rests in a round-bottomed flask, suspended over a weak alcohol flame, pale blue when still, violet when swirled. Now, under the pressure of rising thunder, it turns the color of hematite. She lowers her face to it, close enough to see her reflection ripple across the curved surface. And that's when the image changes. Not the liquid, the reflection. Instead of her face, she sees a field, open, dry, sun-blasted, and something moving across it. A caravan. No. Too slow. More like a procession. Figures in white robes, each holding glass globes aloft, walking in a spiral around a pillar of smoke. The widow blinks. The image is still there. She stands upright. Quickly, nearly knocks the flask off its stand. She grabs a slate and begins to sketch it from memory. The angle of the sun, the curve of the smoke, the spiral of the robed procession. Then she looks again. This time, the surface shows a street she's never seen. Narrow, paved with glass bricks, lined with buildings that lean unnaturally outward, as though trying to hear one another's secrets. She sees someone walking, slowly, hooded, carrying a lantern filled not with flame, but with stormlight, lightning trapped and squirming like a caged eel. The image flickers, changes. Now a library, but not hers. The walls are made entirely of glass stacked with books whose pages float, unbound, in mid-air. Then the storm hits. Thunder cracks directly above the tower. The glass panes tremble. Some ring like bells. The potion in the flask flares bright gold, then goes opaque. When it clears, nothing, just her own pale face distorted in the curve. She jots everything down, shorthand, notes spilling over the margins. She barely hears the thunder anymore. She's fixated on one detail. In every image, each brief, shifting vision, there was a tower, always distant, always glass, always shaped like this one. She flips open her late husband's sketchbook, the one marked with a red ribbon she'd never untied. Now she does, inside blueprints, not just for this tower, but versions of it, dozens. Some wider, some narrower, some with curved ceilings, some crowned with prisms or beacons, but all glass and all dated. Oddly, some marked with years that haven't happened yet. One drawing has today's date, and a note. Storm-brewed liquid achieves resonance when glass matches itself in multiple places. She stares at the phrase, glass matches itself, like a reflection or a network. She remembers the maps, the curved mirror, the ink, they're all pieces. But of what? She repositions the flask, adds 3 drops of distilled myrrh. A shimmer returns to the surface. This time a voice speaks, not from the flask, from behind her. One word. Again, she turns, no one there. But in the round window, a shape, not the usual face. A mask this time, porcelain, expressionless, hovering just behind the pane. Its mouth opens slightly. The wind shifts. She says nothing, just walks to the pane, lays her palm flat against the cool surface. The mask fades, replaced, briefly, by an image of her tower, viewed from above. She can see herself in the window, looking up. Then it's gone. The wind dies. The potion stills. She collapses into the nearest chair, as if whatever force has been pressing down on the tower has finally relented. She breathes. Once, twice, then reaches for her journal. Potion responds to storm, but images not all temporal, some future, some shared. If tower is mirrored elsewhere, are we looking at each other? Outside, the rain lightens, a mist rises, and the clouds part just enough to reveal a silver streak across the sky, a strange arc far too low to be a shooting star. She stares, then returns to the potion. Whispers, "Show me." The liquid swirls, clears, and reflects a garden. Not hers, but familiar. Lavender overgrown, and a man, kneeling, digging. He turns, and it's her husband, alive, younger. Then the image shifts again. Same place, same man. But this time, he's watching her, directly, smiling faintly. She backs away. The potion goes black. This time, she doesn't write anything. She just sits in the stormlight and listens, because now she's almost certain someone else is watching through the glass, and maybe always has been. The glass has begun to speak in footsteps. It starts subtly, at first like settling wood, the occasional groan of the tower's old bones. But then comes the unmistakable tap-tap of a heel on stone, climbing the spiral stair from below. The widow of Glass Hill freezes mid-stir, one hand holding a pipette suspended over an open flask. She doesn't move, doesn't blink. The steps stop. She waits. The steps resume. Closer this time, not running, not creeping, just walking, as if they belong here. She sets the pipette down with deliberate care and slides silently across the tower floor to the trapdoor. It's still sealed. The old telescope mount wedged into the iron hinges hasn't budged. There's no wind tonight, no draughts to trick the ear, and yet, there it is again. Tap, tap. She whispers through the wood. Who's there? Nothing. Then tap, twice, right beneath her. She backs away, slowly, eyes on the door. Something presses upward, just slightly. Enough to creak. Then, silence. She retreats to the corner where her bell jars are stored and selects the heaviest, one containing powdered bismuth and a brittle sliver of quartz. Not a weapon, but solid, real. She waits. 15 minutes. Nothing. The steps do not return. But when she inspects the door hours later, she finds fingerprints on the brass latch. Long, smudged, damp. She doesn't go down the stairs for 2 full days. Instead, she turns her focus to her reflections again, but not just her own, There's a curious thing she's been meaning to test about image latency. Some years ago, she read a fringe theory that curved glass could hold reflections longer than flat mirrors, like wax impressions that fade slowly over time. The scholar who wrote it claimed to have once seen his own reflection smile 2 minutes after he did. She had rolled her eyes. But now she's ready to try. She stands before the north-facing convex window at sunrise, when light is slow, heavy, reluctant. She moves her hand left, then waits. Nothing. She lifts her chin, waits. Still nothing. Then, a minute later, the image twitches. Not a match. A delay. She tests it again, raises her right hand, waits. 30 seconds later, her reflection follows. She records the delay. 28. 4 seconds. She tests again. 24. 7. Then 18. 9. The reflection is catching up. She stops moving, and the reflection keeps going. It tilts its head, blinks, smiles. She does none of those things. It mouths something. She can't read it. She tries a trick, holds a small chalkboard behind her in the real world, but within view of the reflection. Writes, "Who are you?" The reflection reads it, nods, then writes back, without chalk. The words simply appear across the reflected board. "I'm what you let in." She steps away. The image vanishes. That afternoon, she lifts the cover of an old apothecary crate and finds something she didn't place there, a mirror shard, thin, oval, stained with soot. Tied to it with red thread is a scroll of paper no larger than her palm. She unrolls it carefully. The handwriting isn't hers. It's her husband's, but shakier, less precise. It reads, "Don't trust the ones that smile first. They always smile first." She doesn't remember him ever writing that. She doesn't remember this mirror at all. She examines it under the desk lamp. Just a normal shard at first glance. But when held up to the curved window, it shows the stairs. Empty. Then the next second, a flicker, a man halfway up. Gone again. She runs to the window. Looks down. No one. She returns to the shard. The figure's one step closer. Now she's breathing faster. She places the shard in a pouch, stuffs it deep into her coat pocket, and paces the room, reciting the names of every herb she's ever known, just to keep her mind from unraveling. Then she hears it again. The footsteps, but this time they're going down, back into the depths of the tower. She doesn't follow. She doesn't move. She just waits. When it's quiet again, she writes in her journal, "Something is using the tower's own acoustics against me." Footsteps out of sync. Possibly illusions, but the reflection delay confirms presence outside of time. Not hallucination. Not fully. She underlines "not fully" 3 times. That night, unable to resist, she returns to the curved window. Only this time, she doesn't test it with motion or chalkboards. She simply whispers, "Why are you climbing the stairs?" There is no reply, but the reflection appears again. It is her, but not her. The other version, her double lifts one hand and taps the glass. Once, then raises a finger to its lips. Shh, and then walks backward and vanishes into the curve. The real widow does not sleep, not even a blink, because at the back of her mind, something new has taken root. A question. Not who is in the tower, but how long have they been there? The widow of Glass Hill wakes, or rather, she stops pretending to sleep, with her cheek pressed to the desk and her spine aching from the angle. The candles have long since burned out. The tower is dark, except for the faint pre-dawn wash of blue that seeps in through the high windows, stretching the shadows thin and colourless. She doesn't open her eyes right away, because she hears it again. The sound of sand, pouring, but not steadily, not like an hourglass tipped and left to drain. This sound stops, starts, reverses, trickles up. She opens her eyes. The hourglass is gone. Her mind races. Did she move it? No. It always sits at the center of the work table, aligned with a crack in the wood that splits it almost symmetrically. A comforting little geometry. It's been there for weeks, and now it's not. She stands, looks beneath the table. No sign of it. Not smashed, not tipped, just absent. She searches the shelves, behind the distillation tubes, in drawers. Nowhere. The floorboards creak as she paces. The shadows shift. Then a thought creeps in. Unwelcome but undeniable. Check the mirror. She hesitates. Then moves to the warped mirror leaning against the southern wall. The one she uses to check burn angles and test candle throw. She stands in front of it. There, on the table reflected perfectly, is the hourglass, sitting in its usual place, full of sand. But in the real room, nothing. She stares at the reflection, raises a hand, waves. The reflection waves back. She looks again. The hourglass is still there. She walks back to the table, touches the space where the hourglass should be. Her fingers meet only wood. She lifts her hand. Dust clings to her fingertip in the shape of a circle, exactly where the base once stood. So something had been there. She moves back to the mirror. Now the hourglass is tipped on its side, sand pouring slowly out, upward. She reaches behind the mirror, thinking maybe there's a twin, maybe a trick, nothing but stone. She presses her hand to the glass. It is cold, and then she sees something else. Beyond the reflection of the tower room, past the hourglass, a desert, vast, white, shimmering. The hourglass rests on the cracked surface of the desert floor, perfectly upright. She blinks. The reflection snaps back to match the real room. Hourglass gone, she writes furiously. Hourglass has vanished physically, but appears in reflective realm. Current location, impossible desert. Weather, heat shimmer, no vegetation. Refraction or projection, or retrieval, she adds another line. Sand in glass appears coarser, not from tower. Later, while grinding dried fennel seeds for a separate mixture, old habits die hard. She hears a clink behind her. She turns. The hourglass is back, on the table, standing upright. She rushes to it, examines the sand. It's no longer pale tan, it's now deep red and faintly glittering. She turns the glass. The sand flows. Slowly, no reversal. She places it beside her journal and begins a list. Texture coarser than original. Color crimson, almost garnet. Movement smooth but slow, no stutter. Sound, faint hum when in motion. She thinks of a tale once told by an old tinkerer who sold barometers at the village solstice fair. He claimed he once found an hourglass in a sunken abbey that counted backwards only when someone lied in its presence. Most dismissed it as a metaphor for guilt. But what if, she whispers aloud, the hourglass, where did you go? The sand pauses mid-flow, then resumes. She sits back, whispers again, slowly. What did you see? Nothing happens. Then, after a long breath, she writes the question in the mirror ink, warms the page. Words appear. Where I will be, not where I was, where I will be. She touches the hourglass. It's warm, warmer than it should be. She doesn't sleep again that night. The next morning, she tests the glass in other reflections. In the water bowl, no image. In a polished spoon, hourglass appears upside down, sand climbing upward. In the curved north window, the hourglass is missing, replaced by a compass, spinning wildly. She marks each test. She realizes with growing clarity that the hourglass has become a kind of lens, a keyhole through which something else peeks, or waits. She moves it to the window ledge, observes, nothing at first. Then, in the glass behind it, a shape, human, no, too tall, wrong proportions. Like a shadow cast by a flame that doesn't obey fire, she lifts the hourglass. The figure disappears. She replaces it. The figure returns. She writes one more question, trembling slightly now. Is the hourglass yours? The answer appears slowly, almost regretfully. It was. Then another line appears, fainter, until you turned it. She closes the journal, hides the hourglass under a bell jar, wraps the jar in cloth, shoves it into a drawer, then sits very still, because now she understands. She didn't just see another place, she touched it, and whatever was watching through the hourglass knows her now. She finds the map behind the mirror on the 11th night, not behind it like a secret compartment or a folded parchment pasted to the wall, no. She finds it inside the mirror, rippling just beneath the glass's surface like an oil slick floating atop a pond. It appears only under very specific conditions, a taper candle lit at exactly 2:13 a.m., placed one hand width from the eastern curve of the brass-framed looking glass. This knowledge doesn't come from experimentation, it comes from the ink. She had written, perhaps carelessly, "Where are you leading me?" The answer bloomed, "Trace the fire." The map is always waiting. And so, 1 hour past midnight, she followed the flame. The mirror darkens not to blackness, but to a smoky grey that eats the room behind her, replacing it with another world entirely. A map blooms outward from a single glowing node, her tower unmistakably marked with a 7-pointed star. Roads spool outward in impossible directions, not radiating in lines but in arcs, spirals and sudden forks. Rivers of light curl through terrain that looks nothing like the countryside outside Glass Hill. Some of the rivers flow upward. The map pulses, then shifts. The locations rearrange themselves as she watches. Glass towers appear, small ones, massive ones partially shattered. Each flicker before settling again. There must be dozens, hundreds. Some are marked with symbols she recognizes, alchemical glyphs for salt, for mercury, for air. Others are stranger, shapes she's only seen in her dreams. A curved triangle made of eyes, a teardrop with teeth. In the lower corner, near the very edge of the frame, there is a sigil she does know, the mark her husband once scratched into every private notebook, a stylized letter G with 7 strokes. She touches the symbol in the mirror, it shimmers, then begins to move. No, not move, zoom. The frame pulls her closer, closer, until the G expands into a city, a floating fortress of glass and brass orbiting what looks like a starless void. Roads spiral inward. Tiny glass spires dot the surface like teeth. The flame flickers. The image warps. The map recoils, contracts, before collapsing entirely into a dot of white fire in the mirror's center. The candle dies. She's alone again, with only her own startled reflection looking back. And behind her, just over her left shoulder, something else. She spins. Nothing, but the air smells of static, like old copper and lightning. She returns to her desk and draws what she remembers, but the map won't stay still in her mind. The roads shift as she sketches. She writes, "Map not static," seems responsive, possibly sentient, acts like it recognizes viewer. She considers the implications. A map that watches you, a path that changes based on your questions. She returns to the mirror, candle in hand, but hesitates. Instead, she takes out the bronze mirror coil, holds it up to the main mirror. The image inside the coil doesn't show the map. It shows her, older again, same figure as before. Silver hair, ink-stained robe, staring back through the device. This time, the older self is holding something, the hourglass, but it's empty. The sand is gone, and the hourglass glows red hot. Then the coil darkens. No image. The widow sets it down slowly. She writes again, ink shaking, hourglass may be key. Future self appears to carry it. Emptied, used, burned, need caution. Stillness blankets the tower, until she hears a soft tap. She turns. It comes from the mirror again, but not from the surface, from behind it. She examines the frame. There is no seam, no way to remove the glass, but the tapping continues, rhythmic, like code. She writes the pattern down. 3, pause, 2, pause, 5. She recognizes it. A forgotten pattern from her husband's private cipher. It means open me. She hesitates. Then carefully, she aligns 3 small flasks on the shelf behind the mirror, each labeled with a letter from the cipher's code. When the last one clicks into place, the mirror flickers. Not a trick of the light. It shifts. The glass now reflects a different room, circular like hers, but inverted. Light streams up from the floor, and the ceiling opens to stars she does not recognize. Everything is reversed, mirrored. The bookshelves spiral counterclockwise. The furniture is familiar but flipped, and in the center of that reversed room stands her, but she's wearing the porcelain mask. She blinks. So does the reflection, simultaneously. For once, it's in sync. Then the masked version raises a hand. So does the real widow. Together. The mirror wavers. A ripple passes through the glass, and the 2 reflections almost merge. She stumbles back, closes her eyes, waits. When she opens them again, It's just a mirror. Her face, unmasked, alone. She breathes, shallow and fast. Then she laughs, unexpectedly, just once, a bitter, tired sound, and writes, "The map moves, the mask knows, the mirror remembers, none of these things sleep." She finds the spectacles the next morning, buried deep in the bottom drawer of her husband's old apothecary cabinet, nestled inside a velvet-lined case. The metal is cold, tarnished with age. The lenses, tinted a pale green, bear faint striations, like veins in jade, but clearer, more deliberate. She doesn't remember ever seeing them before. The case bears no label, but a scrap of parchment inside reads, "For those who must see what has been lost." She holds them up to the light. The room behind the lenses darkens slightly, colors shifting toward the blue end of the spectrum. Nothing profound, nothing mystical, yet, still, something about the note feels like a challenge. She puts them on. At first there's no difference, just a tinge of color, the world with a subtle green glaze. But as her eyes adjust, she notices the corners of the room don't quite behave. Shadows curve where they shouldn't. The spaces between things seem looser, and then she sees it. Just there, beside the fireplace. A figure, pale, faint, almost translucent. No more than a whisper of form, standing still, watching. She takes the spectacles off. The figure disappears. She puts them on again. The figure is back. It doesn't move, doesn't breathe. It's not smoke, not a stain. It's human-shaped, but barely. She approaches. The shape flickers, as though aware of being noticed, and then it slowly raises a hand. It doesn't wave, it points, directly at the bell jar housing the hourglass. She doesn't look away, she simply nods. A small, wary acknowledgement. The figure fades. She removes the glasses, writes quickly. Spectacles reveal presences otherwise unseen. Lenses possibly designed for post-life perception. Ghosts, not accurate term. Figures seem more like echo prints or memory loops, pointed directly at hourglass. Confirmed second time. This object is Nexus. She tries the spectacles again in other rooms. In the stairwell. Two figures, walking opposite directions. Neither looks at her. In the herb chamber. None. In the observatory, where light curves strangely and dust never seems to settle. Six shapes, seated in a circle. One stands as she enters. They face her. None smile. She backs out slowly and shuts the door. Later that evening, she ventures outside, spectacles in hand, just past the herb garden, near the root cellar entrance. She spots another shape, this one seated on a bench, as if watching the sky. This one wears a cloak, identical to her husband's. She says nothing. The figure remains still, but when she steps closer, it slowly turns its head. Even without features, she knows it's looking at her. She murmurs, "You left me nothing but puzzles." The figure lifts a hand, points, not at her, but upward. She follows its direction, sees only clouds. No moon, no stars. And then, a glint. Just one. As if something above the tower, impossibly high, just reflected her own candlelight back down. She lowers her gaze. The figure is gone. Back inside, she sits at the desk and reviews her journal. One note catches her eye from earlier in the week. Spectacles were never meant for clarity. Perhaps distortion is the point. Perhaps seeing the extra is not the blessing we imagine. She puts the glasses back on and studies her reflection in the north window. It's not smiling, but it's moving differently again. Mouth twitching, eyes slightly out of sync. Then it speaks. No sound, just shape of lips. A single word, near. She removes the spectacles. Everything normal. She tries the mirror coil next, aligning it with the window. The face appears again, this time wearing a mask. But the mask is cracked. Jagged fissures spider through the porcelain. From the mouth, something seeps. Not blood, not ink. Something older. She closes the coil. Fights nausea. She seals the spectacles in the velvet case and writes across the top in firm, sharp ink. Use only with barrier circle. Consequences unclear. Then she draws the circle. Salt, chalk, a sprig of thyme for anchoring. She places the case in the center, draws 7 small marks around it, one for each window in the tower. At midnight, she hears the footsteps again. This time, they stop directly at the trapdoor. She doesn't speak, just puts on the spectacles, and sees him, or the echo of him, standing at the door, one hand pressed to the wood. No longer a pale shape. This is clear, real. He looks up, meets her gaze through the floorboards, and mouths two words. Not Fennel, not nearby. Come down. She does not. She lowers the glasses. He's gone. She writes. They want something from below. I won't give it. Not yet. Then she sits in silence, glasses on her lap, and outside in the darkness beyond the highest glass window, a shape watches, larger than a man, far older than any reflection, and wearing her smile. The winter solstice arrives like a stranger wearing a familiar coat, quiet, familiar in its weight, but somehow unsettling. The sun doesn't rise so much as suggest itself, a dim silver smear behind heavy clouds. Inside the tower, the air feels thicker, hungrier. The widow of Glass Hill wakes before dawn and prepares for something she cannot name. Today she performs a ritual she once dismissed as apocryphal nonsense. It comes from a slim volume she'd found in the hollow spine of Corpus Vitrum, its presence unlisted in any known index. The text was written in red ink and bound backward, as if it didn't want to be read. The title, The Refraction Rite, subtitled in smaller script, for seeing past what lies before. She'd skimmed it once, laughed, but she hadn't yet seen maps inside mirrors or vanished hourglasses. She hadn't yet watched her reflection delay by seconds or smile without her permission. Now she reads with reverence. The rite calls for mirrors. 7 of them, angled precisely. She has 6. The 7th she crafts herself, grinding a salvaged lens to a curve the book insists upon, using volcanic ash and salt water to polish its surface. Next, it calls for a prism filled with solstice light. She doesn't have one, so she improvises. She takes a crystal phial and fills it with distilled vinegar and honey, places it at the window just as the sun, faint and trembling, peeks through the glass. The light catches it, just for a moment. Then the room glows, subtle but strange. She sets the mirrors in a spiral, edges overlapping, forming a 7-pointed configuration that refracts anything in the center. She steps into it and places the hourglass at her feet. It hums, softly, like a heartbeat heard through snow. She takes a deep breath, closes her eyes, and whispers the invocation from the book. The words are not in Latin, though they pretend to be. They taste wrong on the tongue, bitter, like burnt cloves. The room responds, not with sound, but with shift. Light bends, the angles change. Her breath echoes back to her, but slower, then faster. Then overlapping, she opens her eyes and finds herself not in her tower, but in all of them. 1,000 variations ripple across the mirrors. Towers tall and thin, towers sunken in ice, towers crowned in flame, towers filled with laughter, and towers overgrown with vines. Each one holds a version of her, some whispering, some screaming, one weeping openly at the sight of her, another, older, eyes silver, nodding slowly as if to say finally, and then one mirror goes dark, not blank, not broken, just empty, no tower, no widow, only void. She stares at it too long. The hourglass pulses at her feet. Its sand begins to glow, red at first, then white. It spills upward. The light in the tower surges. The mirrors begin to shiver, not shake, shiver like glass under pressure. She tries to step back, but the space resists her. The spiral has sealed. The older version of her, the one with silver eyes, leans forward in her mirror, speaks. No sound, just lips. 3 syllables. Do not stay. She clutches the hourglass, turns it. The sand freezes in midair. The mirrors go still. The spiral cracks, softly like frost retreating. She stumbles out, back into her tower, alone, almost. The mirrors remain arranged, each one now showing her tower again, but the reflections lag. By hours, she tests one. In mirror 3, she sees herself writing, notes she hasn't yet made. In mirror 6, she's asleep, but in mirror 7, the one she made herself, there's a door on the far wall, a door that doesn't exist. She turns around. No door. She looks back. Still there, in the mirror. She checks every brick on the far wall. Nothing. Until she taps one. It rings hollow. She pries it loose. Behind it, a small metal box. Inside, a key, wrapped in red string. She doesn't know what it unlocks. Yet, she places it gently beside the spectacles and writes. The right reveals temporal layering, possible overlap between selves and versions. Mirror 7 shows door not present in current timeline. Key found suggests causality loop or invitation. She seals the note, slides it under the hourglass. The sand inside now glows faintly. All the time, the wind outside picks up. She hears bells, no village chime, no clock, just soft, distant bells, dozens, echoing, coming closer. She peers into mirror 3 again. Her future self looks up, locks eyes with her, then mouths a warning. The bells are not ours. Her reflection has stopped obeying her. At first, the delays were slight, half a second, maybe 2, a mirrored twitch trailing behind her real hand, a blink out of sync, a smile that came a beat too late. It was unnerving, yes, but manageable. Tonight, though, her reflection acts like it's done waiting. The widow brushes a strand of hair behind her ear. In the mirror, her double tucks it behind the wrong ear, then stares, then smiles. The real widow does not. She drops the brush. It clatters across the floor of her study, making her jump more than she'd like to admit. She looks again. She looks again. The reflection is still smiling. Still, her hands shake. She closes the curtain on the northern window, the one with the oldest and most warped glass. The reflection remains for a heartbeat longer, grinning through velvet before finally fading into darkness. She breathes out, sharp and shallow. This isn't how reflections behave. And the worst part, she's not entirely surprised. It began, she thinks, during the solstice ritual. Something loosened that night. Something crossed through, not a ghost, not a shadow, but a version, a mirrored self, no longer bound to glass. She tries to write, to ground herself, but her quill hand won't steady. She dips the pen. The ink flows strangely too thin. The page reads, "I have been here longer than you." She didn't write that. She slams the journal shut and locks it. Enough. She goes to the vanity mirror in the far alcove. A different one, less warped, less alive. She wipes the surface clean with a square of linen and stares at herself. Just her, normal. Then slowly, her mirrored self lifts a hand, the same as hers, in sync, then tilts her head, still matched, then blinks, twice. The widow only blinks once. A minor difference, but unmistakable. She raises a hand. Her reflection mirrors it. But this time, the face in the glass mouths something, silent, but unmistakable. "Let me out." She steps back, mouth dry. "No," she whispers aloud. The reflection's smile twists. The lips move again. "Then I will take your place." She slaps the curtain shut so hard it rips at the seam, then locks the mirror cabinet and wedges it shut with iron tongs. She needs proof. She fetches the mirror coil, aligns it with the tall, narrow mirror on the stair landing, looks through. She sees herself, reading, but not here, not now, wearing a different robe, green, not black, reading a book she doesn't own, a book titled The Second Self. She scribbles the title into her margin notes, then returns to the tower's apex, where the broad convex window shows stars in strange places. She removes the velvet cloth covering the warped mirror, stares directly into it. No hesitation. "Who are you?" she asks aloud. The glass fogs slightly, then clears. Her reflection is gone. In its place, a dimly lit hallway, glass on both sides. At the far end stands a woman, her face obscured, but her stance familiar. The figure begins to walk forward. With each step, the hallway narrows. The mirror begins to bend, warp, distort, until the woman's face comes fully into view. It's hers, but different. Eyes sunken, cheekbones sharper. A mouth that doesn't seem to know how to smile properly. She reaches the other side of the mirror and presses both palms to the glass. So does the widow, and when their hands meet, palm to palm, her twin speaks. For the first time, sound comes through the glass. One word, clear, unmistakable. "Switch." She jerks her hands back. The mirror cracks down the center, not shattering but fracturing like a fault line in a frozen lake. Her reflection reforms, now dressed like her again, now mimicking her movements again, as if nothing had changed, but she knows it has. She doesn't close the curtain this time. She watches, and the reflection watches back. All night, neither blinking, neither moving. When morning comes, what little of it filters through the fog, the widow finds a fresh note on her work table, handwritten, not hers. Reflections are not copies, they are rehearsals. She doesn't touch it. She burns it. Then, after a long silence, she reopens the journal and writes. The twin wants more than mimicry. It wants access. Possibly sentient, possibly autonomous. If the reflection can manipulate glass, can it move between towers, between selves? She underlines the last sentence, then closes the book and whispers, I'm not ready. From behind her, a voice that is almost hers replies, but I am. She spins. Nothing. Only her shadow, longer than usual, bending where it shouldn't. She does not sleep that night, and in the mirror, her other self does not blink. It begins with a name she doesn't remember knowing. She wakes at her desk again, always the desk, as if the tower refuses to let her collapse anywhere else. The candle beside her has burned to a waxy disk, the wick curled like a question mark. In her hand is a scrap of paper, clutched tight, as though it had written itself and begged to be held. On it, one word, Eldara. She says it aloud. It feels familiar, but wrong, like a memory from someone else's dream. She flips open her journal to the last page. Blank. Then she notices a phrase already written at the top, one she didn't write. Drink to remember what never happened. The ink is hers, the words aren't. She sets the page down carefully, the way you would place a mirror facing the wall. She moves through the tower like a ghost of herself, lighting candles, opening windows for air she doesn't need. It's not until she opens the supply drawer beside the herb rack that she notices the bottle. Amber glass, no label. Half full, she uncorks it. The scent is familiar, myrrh, crushed rosemary, something faintly metallic, and fennel, always fennel. She remembers mixing something like this years ago, an experimental elixir designed to stimulate long-term memory, a fringe theory from a 14th century herbalist who claimed the soul stores names before the brain knows them. Historians still argue whether the account was a metaphor or a confession written under torture. She dips a finger into the liquid, tastes it. It's bitter, cold, then warm. And suddenly, she's not in the tower anymore. She's in a garden. Her garden, but younger. It's spring. The lavender is barely ankle high. Her husband kneels nearby, planting something. He turns and smiles. Eldara, he says. She gasps, then wakes, back at the desk. The bottle is still there. The scrap of paper still says her name, but now it also says, you are not the first. She pours the elixir into a small porcelain cup and drinks fully. The taste burns, and the memories arrive, not as flashes, but as layers, multiple versions of the same moment. Her in the garden, planting fennel, her in a different dress, in a different garden, with no husband at all, her as a child, in a windowless room with mirrored walls, being asked her name again and again, her as an old woman, writing the name Eldara in a ledger that dissolves into ash. The tower sways, or she does. She grabs the desk to steady herself. The mirror across the room is glowing, not reflecting, glowing, as if lit from within. She stares into it. There she is, dozens of her, rows of mirrored selves, all mouthing words at once. She picks out one phrase repeated most often, we are returning. She backs away. The hourglass on the shelf begins to hum. The sand turns the color of bone. She writes feverishly. The elixir recalls not just memory but overlapping identities. Eldara predates tower, may predate me. Echoes of other selves persist in glass. A name is not protection, it's a bridge. She looks up. Her reflection is watching, but it's not mimicking. It mouths. Do you want to remember more? She hesitates, then nods. The mirror fogs, clears. She sees a city, glass domes, towers spindly as needles, streets lined with pale lights. Floating above it all is her tower, not resting on the earth, but suspended in air by rings of mirrored light. She sees herself at its center, but she is not alone. 12 figures surround her, masked. Ritual robes, chanting her name, Eldara, Eldara, Eldara. Then the vision blurs, becomes the tower again. She drops to her knees, weeping, not from sorrow, from recognition. These are not dreams, they are returns. The elixir is nearly gone. She saves the last mouthful, then writes on a fresh page. Eldara was the name I wore before the world had names. The name the glass remembers. Not a widow, not a wife, a witness, a lens, a key. She underlines key twice. From the drawer she retrieves the small brass key wrapped in red thread. She knows where it goes now. Not to a drawer, to her. She tucks it under her collar, wears it against her skin. The tower is no longer silent. Every pane vibrates faintly, like tuning forks on the verge of harmony. The reflection smiles. And this time, so does she, because now she understands. She's not going mad. She's waking up. The knock comes at midday. 3 sharp raps against the base of the tower's outer door, confident, mechanical, and not at all hesitant. No one knocks like that, unless they expect to be let in. The widow of Glasshill pauses mid-sentence. Her pen hovers over the journal, dripping ink beside the word returning. She hasn't had a visitor in 4 months, and no one ever comes unannounced. From the upper window, she peers out, cautious. A riderless horse waits below, reins tied to the old iron hook embedded in the tower's base. Beside it, a man stands, military posture, royal blue coat, no cloak, no travel dust, just a gloved hand raised in patient expectancy, royal by the colors. She doesn't go down right away. She has her rules. Instead, she watches him pace in a small, precise arc, checking his pocket watch 3 times in the span of 10 minutes. He doesn't knock again, just waits, like he knows she'll come. Eventually she does. She opens the door slowly. The chain remains bolted. The crack is narrow. The envoy smiles, thin and practiced. Lady Glasshill, he says smoothly. Or should I say, Eldara, her breath catches. The smile widens. I see you been reading the old books. She doesn't respond. I've been sent on behalf of the crown, he continues. His Majesty's court has an interest in a certain device said to have originated here, a visibility engine, or perhaps something grander, one of your late husband's unfinished designs. She narrows her eyes. I'm not in the business of royal curiosities. No, he says, but you're in the business of memory. And truth be told, the engine is neither unfinished nor fictional. It's just been misplaced. She closes the door, locks it. From behind the wood, she says, if the king wants dreams, tell him to sleep. There's a long pause. Then a folded note slips beneath the door. No name, no seal, just a diagram, a precise rendering of her tower's upper floor, and in the center, the hourglass, drawn in perfect detail, down to the red-flecked sand and bronze-ringed frame. She hears him mount the horse. Then, softly, the hourglass was never meant to be used here. It was meant to choose. You're not the only one who's seen things in the glass, Lady Eldara, and some of us don't want to remember. The hoofbeats retreat. Silence returns. She picks up the note. On the back, a phrase in her husband's old shorthand. Visibility bends differently when truth is observed from inside the lie. She stares at it for a long time, then sets it gently on the fire grate, and doesn't burn it. Later, she pulls out her husband's blueprints, some labeled, some scratched through violently. In the margin of one, a phrase she'd overlooked. The eye is not the only witness. Mirrors store. Sand chooses. Prism reveals. She returns to the drawer with the hourglass, removes it from under the bell jar, sets it upright. The sand begins to move, upward, then sideways. Then it splits, half rising, half falling. She blinks. The movement stops. She dons the green lens spectacles, looks at the glass. It's no longer empty. A figure is visible again, masked, cloaked, holding a twin hourglass, its sand reversed, black as pitch. The envoy said it chooses. She whispers aloud, "Is that you?" The figure tilts its head, raises a hand, mimics her, then points, not at her, At the door, as if to say he'll come back, she removes the glasses, tucks them into their case, then wraps the hourglass again. But this time she keeps it close, not locked away, just guarded. The next night, she returns to her journal and writes, Royal Court aware of the tower's design. Likely after the visibility engine, theory matches husband's clock sight papers. But this isn't about sight, it's about selection. They don't want truth, they want control. She adds another line. Asterisk. They think the hourglass shows, they don't know it chooses. Or perhaps, summons. The prism she used in the solstice rite glows faintly. The tower hums. She hears, faintly, the bells again, softer now, closer, slower. Not the kind of bells that call you home. The kind that warns something is coming. She wonders, is that what the envoy hears when he sleeps? She writes one last phrase before extinguishing the lamp. If they come for the glass, they will see themselves, and that will be enough to destroy them. She finds the letter sealed in quicksilver. It's hidden beneath a loose plank in the study floor, discovered entirely by accident, or so she tells herself. The wood had creaked in an unfamiliar tone, a sour little pip that made her stop mid-step. Beneath it, wrapped in oilskin, tucked flat between stone and timber, was an envelope, heavy, cold, stamped with her husband's seal. The wax is silver, with a sheen like mercury, and soft to the touch even after all these years. It pulses faintly when held, as if alive, as if waiting. She does not open it right away. Instead, she sets it on her desk, walks 3 laps around the tower, feeds the fire, rechecks the salt circle around the mirror, stares into the hourglass until the sand begins to shift direction again, then watches it settle. Only then does she return to the envelope. She cuts the seal with a silver knife. Inside is a single sheet of parchment. The handwriting is her husband's, but less careful. Not the elegant script he used for his journals or letters. This is urgent, scrawled. It reads, Eldara, if you are reading this, then the glass has begun to turn on you. I've seen it too. Reflections that speak before we do. Shadows that bend the wrong way. The tower was meant to filter what came through, but I made it too well. The veil is thinning. Her breath catches. He'd known. She reads on. The hourglass is not just a tool. It is a gate, and once it begins choosing you, it will not stop. It remembers everything, including us. Her hands tremble. She forces herself to continue. If you've started seeing the others, the ones in the windows, do not engage. They are not us. They are versions left behind. Not all of them want to return. She pauses. Eyes flick toward the mirror. The reflection isn't smiling today. It's just watching. Her husband's letter concludes, I went too far. I let it open. I thought I could see what came next. But it's not about vision. It's about invitation. You must not step through. Not yet. Not until the glass gives back your name. She reads that last line 3 times. Not until the glass gives back your name. She touches her chest. The brass key still hangs beneath her collar. She remembers the elixir, the name that bloomed in her mouth like a secret Eldara. She didn't give that name to the mirror. It gave it to her. Was that what he meant? She runs her fingers along the silvered wax. Even broken, it leaves residue. Her fingertips shimmer faintly for minutes afterward. She writes in her journal, the glass does not only reflect, it records. It remembers every name we try on, every thought we don't speak. The hourglass is its anchor, and I may already be too late. She turns the page, then adds, without thinking, you warned me too late. As soon as the ink dries, the mirror across the room fogs. She looks up. The reflection now shows him. Her husband, young, alive, sitting at the desk in this tower, writing. She leans closer. He looks up and mouths something. She scrambles for paper, tries to read his lips. One word, run. She freezes. He mouths it again. Then, in the reflection, he stands, runs toward the mirror. A sound thumps from the glass, a fist against the other side. She stumbles back, drops the parchment. The mirror cracks, hairline, center to edge. Her reflection returns. No sign of him, only her, but older, smiling. Not his smile, her own, but borrowed. She picks up the letter, reads it again. This time, Another line appears beneath the last, written in fresh ink as if it had just been added. If the glass starts writing back, "Get out." She stares at it, then at the parchment, still damp, still shimmering, and she whispers, "Then where would I go?" The hourglass ticks, a sound she's never heard from it before, like the click of a lock or the start of a countdown. She seals the letter inside a black envelope and places it in the hearth, not to burn, just to hide. The silver on her fingers still glows. She tries to wipe it off, but it doesn't fade, not entirely. As if the letter left its mark on more than her skin, as if by reading it she became part of its message. The key around her neck grows warm, and she realizes she hasn't looked in the round window in 3 days. She does now, and in it, her husband's face. Not pressed against the glass this time, not distorted, he's just standing there, behind it, like he never left, wearing a look that says please. She turns away and writes one final note for the night. He opened the door first, but I'm the one it's been waiting for. The tower's history has always been vague. Local villagers say it predates their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, even the old graveyard at the edge of town. No one claims to have built it. It was simply there, the way some mountains are, solid, unmoving, and assumed to belong to no one but themselves. Still, the widow of Glass Hill never questioned its past. Not really. When she married a husband and moved in, the tower was already weathered, already lined with alchemical scratches, occult scrawlings, and marks left by hands too steady to be casual. She had accepted it the way one accepts inherited furniture, with a kind of cautious respect and vague disinterest in origin. But after the silver-lettered warning, she needs answers. She descends into the base of the tower for the first time in months. The lowest chamber is more cellar than library, cold, dry, and pungent with dust. Old beams sag under the weight of forgotten books. The air tastes of iron and ink. There's a cabinet against the far wall she's never managed to open, until now. She retrieves the brass key from beneath her collar, the one wrapped in red string, the one she suspects was never meant to fit anything inside this world. It clicks on the first try. Inside 3 things. 1. A black-bound codex with no title. 2. A rolled vellum scroll, sealed in wax stamped with the letter V. 3. A share of smoked glass, etched with constellations she doesn't recognize. She opens the codex first. It contains only 1 page. Handwritten. This tower was not raised. It was remembered. Glass Hill is a recurrence. The tower returns where it is needed, or where it is forgotten. Time is its only tenant. She reads the line again. Not built, remembered. She opens the scroll. It's a map, not geographic, symbolic. A spiral of mirrored towers arranged in 7 concentric rings, each marked with different symbols, alchemical, celestial, musical. In the center, a blank space labeled simply nihilum, nothing, or everything. She looks at the shard of glass last. When held to the candlelight, the stars etched upon it glow faintly, and then she sees it. A constellation that does not, cannot, exist in the current sky. 12 stars, shaped like a window or a gate. She holds the shard up to the round window. The stars align, not with the sky outside, but with the reflection inside. The constellation exists, but only in the mirrored world. She writes furiously. Tower is not singular. It is part of a mirrored system, possibly networked through celestial imprints. Glass not a barrier but a conduit. Reflections preserve not just images but origins. She flips through her husband's oldest surviving ledger. In the back, on a page long stained with oil and sweat, she finds a line. Glass Hill existed in Prague, in Damascus, in the Hollow Vale, in dreams. It exists wherever someone remembers it hard enough. She returns to the map. 1 tower is circled, labeled in her husband's hand. Glass Hill, active. She checks the codex again. This time she notices a margin note she missed earlier. The tower knows who sees it. Her candle sputters, then flares. The glass shard in her hand vibrates, only slightly, like a tuning fork. Then a sound, a hum, deep and low, pulses through the floorboards. She returns upstairs in a rush, shard clutched tight. The mirrors in the observatory all shimmer faintly. The hourglass on her table turns itself. And in every reflective surface, from flasks to polished metal to darkened panes, she sees the same thing, a version of her tower, empty, then full, then fractured. Each tower is cracked differently, one missing its top spire, one sunk halfway into sand, one ablaze, and in every tower, someone like her, not her, but near enough to know. She places the shard in the center of her prism circle. Each reflected tower stabilizes. They form a ring. One after another, they begin to glow. Then pulse. The tower hums again. And for the first time in decades, a panel in the wall near the observatory swings open. She did not know there was a panel. Inside, a set of lenses, brass-mounted and precisely arranged, shaped like a crown of thorns. And beneath them, a word etched into the copper plate: confluence. She understands immediately. The tower isn't just remembering, it's rejoining. The others are awakening, synchronizing. Somehow, the timing of her experiments, her elixir, her ink, her ritual, has brought them to the same thin place. She places the shard among the lenses. The windows flash, the floor trembles, and every image vanishes, except one, a tower, this tower viewed from a distance, but from a place impossible. A reflection in water, without a surface. She sees herself standing in the observatory, then someone walks up beside her. Not her husband, not herself, someone else. Same key around their neck, same hourglass in their hand. They smile and say a word she cannot hear. She rips the shard from the lenses. The tower darkens, still, but not asleep. She writes, "The tower existed before us, before him, before names. It is not haunted, it is returned to occupied, reflected. The others are awakening, but some of them are already watching." She does not sleep. She does not look in the mirrors, and outside, the stars realign themselves. To match something older, the tiles beneath the tower's observatory floor have always been uneven, so subtly that most would never notice. But the widow of Glass Hill notices everything. Now, since the mirror cracked and the key hummed against her skin, every sound, every breeze, every shift has carried weight. So when her foot lands differently on one stone, just slightly deeper, slightly hollower, she stops, she kneels. The tile in question is etched faintly with a 7-pointed star. She's seen that symbol before, on her husband's early notebooks, on the back of the glass shard, in the spiral mirror ritual. It's not decoration, it's invitation. She presses both hands flat against it. Nothing. Then she places the brass key on top. A soft click. The tile sinks. The air changes. Around her, the glass ceiling refracts the sunlight into unfamiliar angles, like a kaleidoscope caught mid-blink. The observatory creaks. Then, with a subtle thunk, the floor itself shifts, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Not down into the rest of the tower. Beneath it. The stone steps are damp and smooth, carved by hands long dead or never alive. She descends without a lamp. The walls themselves emit a faint glow, as if light is caught inside the glass-veined stones. It's not long before she realizes she isn't walking into darkness. She's walking into sky, not the real one. The chamber opens like a dropped bell, circular and vast. The walls are lined with thick, translucent panels of deep blue glass. And within each one, constellations, old ones, real ones, and some that don't exist in any chart she's ever studied. She walks slowly, heart racing, until she reaches the center of the room, a raised glass dais. Atop it, a single glowing pane of floor glass, perfectly round, almost like the round window, but horizontal. Beneath it, etched into the glass, are dozens of stars. 12 she recognizes. One she does not. It pulses faintly, a 13th constellation. She kneels, traces it with her fingers. The pattern is wrong. It curves in ways that make the eye ache, like it doesn't belong to this sky. She checks her star maps, even the obscure ones. Nothing. Then from behind her, a breath of sound, like silk moving. She turns. No one, but the stars on the wall shift, rearranging themselves, not visibly, not fast, but enough to notice if you watch long enough. She stares into the glass beneath her and sees not her reflection, but a younger version of herself. In the tower, laughing, her husband beside her, alive. They're not speaking, but the emotion is clear. Then the image changes. She's alone again, older, then older still, then someone else wearing her face but not her movements. The floor glass begins to hum. The stars on the walls brighten. She removes the spectacles from her pocket and slips them on. What was already unsettling becomes unholy. Dozens, hundreds of figures. Ghosts. No, echoes. Standing between the stars, behind the glass. Some watching her. Some watching each other. Some weeping. She takes off the glasses. Can't bear it. Then on instinct, she speaks. Softly. Is this where you all went? No answer. Just the hum. She kneels again. Places the hourglass on the glass floor. Its sand still runs sideways. But slowly, she speaks again. Is this where I'll go? The sand pauses, then begins to fall normally. For just a second, then it reverses again. Her hand trembles as she writes in the margin of her sleeve. The subchamber predates tower construction, possibly older than the village, alignment with celestial configurations not currently visible. 13th constellation may indicate alternate timeline or lost sky. Echoes visible in green lenses suggest others have passed through, none returned. She rises. The hourglass ticks. She didn't know it could. The 13th star pulses again. She doesn't touch it. She just watches. And in that moment, she understands the tower didn't forget anything. It was waiting, cataloguing her, watching how she would react, what she would recall, who she would become. And now, it has chosen. She lifts the hourglass from the floor. The moment she does, the floor glass darkens. The stars recede, the figures vanish. Only her reflection remains, alone, whole, and smiling. But her own smile, this time, her own eyes, no delay, no mimicry, just her. She walks back up the spiral steps, seals the tile behind her. The observatory feels lighter, like it's exhaled something it's been holding in for centuries. She returns to her desk, begins to write. The tower's heart is memory, its bones are glass, its breath is light. It remembers what the world forgets, and it chooses who must carry that weight next. She draws the 13th constellation. It doesn't fit the page. She draws it again, still wrong. So she stops, because she knows now the star doesn't belong in the sky. It belongs under the floor. And maybe, so does she. She prepares the final potion in silence. No music, no murmured notes, no whispered hypotheses into the air. The tower hums faintly with awareness, as though it knows what she's about to do. Perhaps it always did. The recipe comes from no book. It has no name. It was revealed in parts, some from mirror ink replies, some scrawled in the corners of her own notebooks without memory of writing them, and one line whispered through a warped window when the hourglass spun backwards mid-sentence. The unveiling brew must see you before you see it, whatever that means. The components are exacting. She begins with frost leaf, pressed under full moonlight. To that she adds violet ash, left from burning a page of the refraction rite. Then water harvested from inside the round window's lower lip during a hailstorm. The condensation is pink-tinged, faintly sweet-smelling. The last element is the most difficult, a sliver of reflection. It's not physical, it's stolen. She obtains it by standing before the cracked mirror at dusk and breathing her name, Eldara, while holding the hourglass. A fleck of glass detaches, no larger than a grain of rice. She grinds it into the mixture. The potion, once still, begins to shimmer, not on the surface inside, as though its center contains a mirror of its own, and that mirror is waking up. She pours it into a silver chalice her husband once used for rituals involving smoke and partial truths. The brew smells of fennel and ozone, familiar and alien all at once. She does not hesitate. She drinks. At first nothing, then everything. The tower disappears. And she sees herself through every version. As a child, running through a field of lavender that isn't hers. As a student, translating alchemical poems written in mirror script. As a bride, holding her husband's hand beside a glass altar. As an old woman, sealing a door with 7 locks before turning to mist, but it continues. She sees other towers, ones made of ice, ones beneath oceans, ones upside down, hanging like chandeliers from the sky. In each one, a version of her stands before a mirror. Each has drunk the same potion, each sees her, and each whispers the same phrase. Now you know. The vision's slow, the light fades, she awakens on the floor, alone, or not, because when she opens her eyes, the glass is full, every window, every mirror, even the shallow reflection in the cooled potion bowl, all showing images that should not coexist. Some are her memories, others are impossible. A child version of herself running from a glass shadow. A mirror shattering inward, then healing in reverse. A wedding that never happened. Her husband, older than he ever lived to be, stepping into the round window like it was a door. Then she sees something new. A reflection of the tower itself, but pulsing, alive, breathing. The tower has veins, glass ones, lit from within by star fire. It is not a structure, it is a being. She stumbles to the journal. Her handwriting flows like water now, effortless. The tower is not built. It is grown, fed by mirrors, by memories, by observation. It survives by being seen and by showing what others refuse to. She looks into the cracked mirror. The fracture is gone. In its place, a door, a perfect replica of the round window, but this time open. Beyond it, stars that do not belong to this sky, and in the distance, a line of towers, glass, infinite. She blinks. They flicker, not out of existence, into something else. A different kind of real. The hourglass on the table rotates itself again. This time, it clicks like a latch, finding its match. She opens the journal again. More writing waits for her. Not hers, just a single line. Drink, see, step through. She looks back at the mirror. The door is still open. And for the first time in days, she isn't afraid, because now she sees the pattern. The tower is not a prison. It is a threshold. The potion was not a risk. It was the price. And the glass? The glass has always been watching, not to trap her, to invite her. She places her hand against the mirror door. The glass warms. She writes, "The unveiling brew shows all versions of truth. I am not becoming the widow of Glass Hill. I am all of them, and I am ready to step through." The mirror ripples. The tower hums. The hourglass runs clear. There is no more sand, only light and a path. She doesn't pack. There is no need. The tower, if it notices, does not protest. In fact, it seems lighter. The floorboards no longer creak with resistance. The mirrors no longer twitch with secrets. The air, long filled with the scent of tinctures and burning rosemary, now smells like rain on stone, clean, expectant. The widow of Glass Hill, Eldara, truly, traces the rim of the empty hourglass one last time. Its chamber glows with a soft amber hue, like late afternoon sun seen through honey. No more sand, no ticking, just silence like a held breath. She lifts the mirror coil from its velvet pouch, holds it up. This time, the image is no longer her reflection. It's a window, a view. She sees the tower, but not from within. From outside, floating among stars that bend in ways Earth's gravity never taught her. The glass glistens like dew on a spiderweb at dawn. Other towers drift nearby, distant siblings of her own, some luminous, others fractured, one burning in complete silence. The mirror coil vibrates in her hand. She sets it down gently on the work table. It leaves behind a perfect circle of frost. She smiles. "All right," she says. "Show me." She approaches the round window. It has grown, not in size, but in presence. The glass pulses faintly, like it remembers breathing. A hush settles over the observatory, dense but not heavy, like velvet against the mind. She touches the pane. It opens. There is no door. Just a ripple, like the surface of a pond catching moonlight. On the other side, nothing and everything. A spiraling corridor of glass, lit by star constellations. She now recognizes echoes of her own memory. The 13th constellation, the one that never fit, hangs directly overhead like a crown. She steps forward, 1 foot through. She does not fall. She floats, weightless. Time slips sideways. Below her or above her, it's impossible to say. She sees every tower she's ever imagined. The one in Prague, nested into a cliffside. The one underwater, surrounded by glimmering kelp. One shaped like a violin. One grown entirely of bone and flame. In one, she sees herself reading. In another, sleeping. In a third, opening the hourglass for the first time. She passes through the corridor like a needle threading memory. The potion's last warmth still flickers in her limbs. Each reflection she passes nods. Each version of her smiles, not in welcome, but in recognition. Finally, the corridor ends. She steps out onto nothing, held aloft by starlight and will. In front of her, a mirror, much larger, much older. This is not glass. It's sucked thought, shaped and cooled into transparency. She sees herself within it, not as she is, as she was, before the tower, before the name, before the forgetting, and the reflection speaks, aloud. Clearly, you came back. She exhales. I always do. Are you ready to see all of it? She nods. The mirror shatters, not violently, not loudly, just releases. Light pours through her. Time pours back. She remembers everything. The 1,000 towers, the many names, the failed experiments, the moments of triumph, the reflections that begged, the windows that whispered. She stands in the quiet, suspended in understanding, and the tower, all of them, watch. They do not ask her to return. They do not urge her forward. They only wait until she turns and walks through the last pane. She is not followed, only remembered. Back in the observatory, the tower breathes once more. The prism turns. The mirrors clear. The hourglass cracks. Once, gently, on the desk, lies a new note. No ink, etched into the wood. She has stepped through. The tower is at rest, until the next memory. And far below, in the village, a child looks up at the tower and swears just for a moment. She sees a woman standing behind the round window, smiling, then gone. The glass stands quiet. The tower breathes softly, and the echoes of Eldara, of the widow of Glass Hill, fade gently into the folds of night. If you've made it this far, then you've wandered through mirrors. You've followed the flicker of lantern light through 1,000 curved corridors of glass. And now, here you are, wrapped in quiet, with your thoughts drifting like mist just above a dreaming village, and you're still awake. Or nearly so. That probably means the tower has found something in you worth remembering. So, before the reflections fade completely and your hourglass resets, we have something gentle to ask. Not loudly, not urgently, just softly. If this tale held your attention, if it stirred something in that quiet, curious corner of your mind, consider letting us know. Yes, that means tapping the little like button, the one that glows when you press it. Almost like glass catching starlight. It may seem small, but the tower notices, and it listens. And if stories like this, full of alchemy and mirrors and gentle unravelings, are your kind of strange, then you may want to subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. We won't ask twice. No automated glass automaton will chase you down the spiral stairwell if you don't. That's a promise. And should you choose to subscribe, know that you're not simply pressing a button. You're stepping into a very particular kind of echo chamber. The good kind, the thoughtful kind, the quiet kind, where people still whisper at windows and wonder what's just beyond the veil. It's a place where mirrors matter, where names are more than labels, where every light flicker might be a message, and every shadow might be a version of you waiting for its own story. If you feel like leaving a comment, we'd love to know where you're listening from. Tell us your location, your local time, or even what the weather's doing outside your window. Is it storming, foggy, crisp and star-pinned? We read them all, sometimes slowly with tea, sometimes with candlelight and pen in hand, just like the widow herself watching your words flicker to life through the warped glass of this strange little channel. And if something stood out in tonight's journey, maybe a moment, a phrase, a vision that clung to you, leave that too. Let us know what stayed with you. The tower collects these things, not in a creepy way, in a let's build a map together kind of way. You can also share this story with someone who might appreciate the quiet, someone who likes strange books and rainy windows, and isn't afraid of a slow story that remembers you back. We don't chase algorithms here. We trust that stories find the right listeners when the time is right, just like the tower. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. You've just been inducted into something that has no name but feels oddly familiar. Like a room you're sure you've never been in before, but somehow know where all the books are kept. And if this isn't your first, well then, we're very glad to see you again. We've kept the windows clean. One last thing before you drift off. Sometimes the best way to support a story is just to remember it. Let it sit in the back of your mind like a folded note. Let it ripple through your dreams. Let it change the way you look at reflections, even just a little. And if, someday, you're brushing your teeth, or walking past a shop window and your reflection seems just a moment out of sync, you never know who might be watching. So go ahead, like the video. Subscribe if you'd like more towers, more strange glass, more slow unraveling dreams. Leave a comment below and join the map we're building. One viewer, one echo, one reflection at a time. Now, dim the lights, turn the fan on low, let the tower slip from view, and when the reflections settle, sleep will be here, waiting, just behind the pane.